Inside the polished, silent cockpit of the starship Celestia, a young boy named Elion sat quietly, his eyes wide with wonder as he stared out into the endless sea of stars. The soft humming of the engines was the only sound, a peaceful song that echoed through the metallic walls. His seat gently rocked with the subtle motion of the vessel gliding through space. Outside, galaxies swirled like painted spirals in a cosmic ocean, and nebulas shimmered like curtains of color flowing in the dark. Elion was alone, but not lonely. This journey was his dream come true, an adventure through the universe, one sector at a time. A mission to see everything the cosmos had to offer. He had studied the stars since he was a small child, reading books, watching maps, memorizing the stories of constellations. Now, with his training complete and his spacecraft ready, he was finally doing what no other child had done before, exploring space on his own terms. The control panel in front of him blinked with lights and digital maps, displaying his location and the regions ahead. His destination was the Andorra sector, a cluster of ancient stars rumored to glow with silver light. With a soft tap on the navigation screen, Elion adjusted the ship's heading, watching as the stars shifted ever so slightly. A comet passed by, its icy tail leaving a glowing trail behind it. Elion pressed a button, activating the scanner to record the sight. "Log entry 1, he spoke into the microphone. "Today, I begin my journey through the stars. I don't know what I'll find, but I will discover every mystery this universe hides." He smiled softly, feeling a spark of courage. The adventure had only just begun. Elion leaned back in his cushioned chair, eyes scanning the vast black canvas ahead. Each pinpoint of light held the promise of something unknown. New planets, drifting satellites, forgotten ruins of civilizations long gone. The universe was not just empty space. It was a book with endless pages, and he was ready to read every word. As the Celestia glided deeper into the Andorra sector, the stars grew denser, shining in hues of blue and white. One particularly bright light caught Elion's attention. Curious, he zoomed in with a telescope camera. What he saw took his breath away. A planet surrounded by rings of crystal-clear ice rotated slowly in the distance. Its surface sparkled, not with water, but with glass-like planes that reflected the nearby stars. "I'll call it Meroria," he whispered, already planning a short detour. He engaged the autopilot and guided the ship closer. As the planet filled the view, he could see the shimmering land and glowing rivers of what looked like liquid light. The ship's scanners hummed, analyzing the atmosphere breathable, with mild temperatures and no signs of danger. Gently, Elion brought the ship down to a soft landing on a clear plateau. As the hatch opened, he stepped outside wearing his travel suit, boots crunching softly against the glimmering surface. The sky above was golden, the stars visible even during the day. Strange flowers grew in clusters nearby, petals glowing faintly in shades of blue. He took a sample carefully and stored it in a container. "Log entry 2, he said, recording again. "The first planet I've discovered is peaceful, beautiful, and untouched. I name it Meroria, the land of reflection. I feel safe here, as if the stars themselves are watching kindly." With a heart full of wonder, he walked slowly, exploring every glinting corner. As Elion explored the shimmering surface of Meroria, he noticed that his own reflection followed him not just in pools of still light, but even in the air, tiny sparkles forming mirror-like fragments that echoed his every movement. It was as if the planet itself was studying him, responding gently to his presence. Though he was young, Elion understood the importance of respect, so he moved carefully, not disturbing the strange flora that dotted the ground. Some of the glowing flowers opened slowly as he passed, releasing soft chimes into the air, like musical whispers. He paused to record the sound, enchanted by the delicate harmony. "Meroria sings," he murmured, smiling. But he couldn't stay long. The universe was wide and calling. After one final look across the sparkling plateau, he returned to the Celestia, gently lifting off the surface and rising back into the starlit sea. Ahead lay the Cradle Nebula, a thick, colorful cloud known for birthing stars. As his ship approached the swirling mist, colors danced across the cockpit windows: purples, oranges, and deep emerald green. The ship's shields activated automatically to protect from the energy fields, and Elion watched in awe as newborn stars blinked to life in the distance. He knew that some of these stars were only seconds old, yet their light would shine for millions of years. "Log entry 3, he spoke with a quiet reverence. "I have entered the Cradle Nebula. It is alive with the birth of stars. I feel like I am in the presence of creation itself." The ship weaved through the glowing clouds, and Elian captured images of floating gas orbs and tiny planets just forming. He realized that here, he wasn't just an explorer, was a witness to the beginning of worlds. As the Celestia glided through the heart of the Cradle Nebula, Elian noticed a soft vibration beneath his feet. The ship's sensors detected low-frequency waves pulsing from a nearby massive protostar surrounded by spinning dust and heat. Elian watched, fascinated, as the forming star pulsed like a heartbeat. He adjusted the external microphone, recording the rhythmic hum of the cosmic cradle. "It's like the universe is breathing," he said softly, resting his hand on the console. He spent hours studying the region, gathering readings, and watching new stars emerge from clouds of glowing dust. Occasionally, he saw small chunks of rock colliding and fusing, the earliest steps of planet formation. It made him feel small, but not unimportant, like a tiny piece in a giant, beautiful puzzle. After logging all the data, he set course for the next region on his chart, the ocean belt, a rare system filled with water-rich planets. As he left the nebula behind, the stars cleared again, and a large blue planet came into view. It shimmered with oceans that covered nearly its entire surface, reflecting the light of 3 nearby suns. Elian named it Aquaria. He descended carefully, and the ship floated above the waves, scanning for safe landing spots. There were no visible continents, only wide, endless water. Then, a curious sight appeared. Tall pillars of coral rising above the sea, like cities built by the waves themselves. He brought the ship to hover above one, dropping a small submersible pod into the water. As he piloted it from the cockpit, fish of strange colors swam past, some glowing gently, others darting like flashes of lightning. "Log entry 4, he whispered in awe. "This planet is alive in ways I've never imagined. It's a world of waves, color, and movement, peaceful and full of life." As the submersible pod dove deeper into Aquaria's vast ocean, Elian's eyes widened with every passing moment. Below the surface lay forests of underwater vines that swayed in rhythm with the currents. Towering spires of translucent coral glowed softly, forming tunnels that seemed to welcome visitors. He guided the pod through one such tunnel, its walls lined with bioluminescent creatures that blinked in synchronized patterns. Schools of fish swirled around the pod, curious but unafraid. Some were round and jelly-like, others had long tails and shimmering fins. One even had what looked like tiny lights along its back, blinking gently like a distant constellation. Elian recorded everything. He knew the universe held many secrets, but the life on this planet was unlike anything he had imagined. He felt a deep respect for it. At the ocean floor, he discovered a flat plain covered in smooth, pearl-colored stones. In the center of it stood a single, tall crystal, rising like a monument. It pulsed with a soft blue glow, and the water around it felt still, almost sacred. "This may be a natural wonder, or something more," Elian noted, his voice low and thoughtful. He didn't disturb the crystal. Instead, he circled it, recorded its hum, and then slowly returned to the surface. Back aboard the Celestia, he took one last look at Aquaria from above. It spun peacefully beneath him, its surface reflecting the soft light of the suns. "Log entry 5, he said. "Aquaria is a place of calm and quiet power. It reminds me that life doesn't always need words to speak. Sometimes, just being is enough." He sat back, letting the moment settle in his heart. Then, with a few gentle taps, he set his course once more toward the edge of the ancient Stargrave cluster. The Celestia moved quietly through the dark corridor of space that led toward the Stargrave cluster, a region Elian had read about in old exploration journals. It was said to be filled with the remnants of dying stars, places where light had once shone brightest, but now only flickered faintly. As the ship approached, the lights outside dimmed and shadows stretched across the dashboard. Ahead lay a haunting beauty. Gigantic skeletal remains of stars floated silently, their forms twisted like ancient sculptures frozen in time. Elian watched in respectful silence as he passed by what remained of a collapsed red giant, its core cracked like a giant geode, faintly glowing from within. He whispered, "These are the graveyards of light." The ship's sensors picked up minimal energy readings, and there were no signs of life, just silence, cold and vast. He knew he was flying through a place of endings, but it didn't feel sad. It felt sacred. It reminded him that all things change, and that even endings can be beautiful. Among the darkened stars, he found a single white dwarf still glowing softly like a candle in the wind. Around it orbited a small planet made of crystal and ash, catching the starlight like a mirror. He named the planet Remnanth, for it stood alone in the darkness, holding on to light. Landing wasn't possible, but he circled it carefully, capturing images and data. Log entry 6, he recorded, his voice calm and steady. In the Stargrave cluster, I've seen the quiet truth of the universe. Stars end, but their stories remain. Their light may fade, but their memory shines on. As he turned the ship away from the cluster, Elion felt something shift in him as deeper understanding that exploration wasn't just about discovery, but also about appreciation. With the Stargrave cluster now behind him, Elion looked forward with renewed purpose. The next stop on his chart was a curious zone known as the Prism Drift, a field of floating mineral shards that reflected and refracted light in dazzling ways. It was unlike any other place in the galaxy. As the Celestia neared the coordinates, the darkness of space began to shimmer faintly. Then, out of the void, thousands of crystalline fragments appeared, spinning slowly, catching the starlight and scattering it in all directions. Beams of color danced across Elion's face in the ship's interior. It was as if he had entered a realm made entirely of light and glass. The prism drift wasn't dangerous as long as he navigated carefully, so he slowed the ship and weaved gently through the field. Each shard was different. Some were thin as needles, others broad like sails. Their surfaces reflected not only the stars, but the ship itself, multiplying its image into countless sparkling echoes. He opened the side window screen and held his hand up, watching as 1,000 tiny reflections of his fingers waved back at him. "This place feels like a dream," he whispered. He released a small probe to collect a sample of one shard drifting nearby. As it was pulled inside, he examined its surface so clear and sharp that it looked invisible from certain angles. Light passed through it and split into colors, casting soft rainbows around the lab. "Log entry 7, he recorded. "The prism drift is a living kaleidoscope. It teaches me that beauty can be found in the simplest of things: a shard of crystal, a beam of light, a moment of stillness." He lingered a while longer, floating quietly, wrapped in shifting colors and gentle silence. Eventually, Elion set a course away from the drifting crystals of the prism drift, watching their glow fade slowly behind him. The colors stayed in his mind, like a memory too lovely to forget. His next destination was one of Great Mystery's holosphere. It was a massive artificial structure detected by old exploration satellites but never visited. Some believed it was built by an ancient civilization. Others thought it was a natural phenomenon that simply looked constructed. Either way, Elion was determined to see it for himself. As the Celestia approached, the stars thinned out, and a massive black shape began to appear. It was like a planet turned inside out, a hollow shell of smooth metal floating in space. Perfectly round, eerily still, and too large to measure at a glance, it blocked out the stars like a silent guardian. A narrow entrance became visible as the ship drew closer. With cautious movements, Elion piloted through the opening and into the darkness within. Inside, the world changed completely. The inner surface of the holosphere was covered in glowing pattern lines, symbols, and circles that pulsed gently like the rhythm of a heartbeat. The ship lights flickered briefly, as if the place was trying to communicate. "Log entry 8, Elion said softly. "I've entered what may be the remains of an ancient creation. It feels aware." As he floated slowly through the interior space, he noticed strange formations along the wall's crystal towers, floating cubes, and spirals of metal, all motionless, yet strangely alive in their silence. He dared not touch anything. Instead, he recorded the symbols, scanned the materials, and listened carefully. No voices, no sounds, just the low hum of existence. It was as if the holosphere waited patiently for understanding. Elion floated deeper into the holosphere, the soft glow of the internal symbols reflecting in his eyes. Each pattern seemed to tell a piece of a story he couldn't yet read, a language of light, too old to translate. But still, he felt something in it, a sense of intention, of design, of memory. The holosphere wasn't just a relic. It was a message left behind by minds who had walked the stars long before him. As he slowly passed a wide wall marked by thousands of pulsing dots, he noticed that some lights dimmed and then brightened again when he neared, like tiny greetings. He reached out instinctively, not touching, just acknowledging. A gentle vibration passed through the ship. It was brief and peaceful, like the echo of a thought too large to fully grasp. He spoke gently into his log recorder. "Log entry 9. I believe this place holds memories. Not just objects, but feelings. Echoes of a civilization that valued thought, order, and peace." Elion turned the ship toward the center of the structure, where a column of slow-spinning lights hovered in a spiral. They didn't serve any obvious purpose, but they mesmerized him. Time felt slower inside the hollow sphere, like the universe had paused to let this place remain untouched. After some time, Elian respectfully turned the ship toward the exit, carrying with him not just data, but a quiet awe. The entrance reopened as he approached, and the stars slowly returned. As he left the hollow sphere behind, he felt changed. "I didn't just explore something today," he whispered to himself. "I was allowed to witness something sacred." The sphere faded into the distance, still pulsing softly, still waiting patiently in its silent corner of the cosmos. Back among the stars, Elian took a deep breath and leaned against his chair. The hollow sphere had left him with questions too large to answer, but also a sense of calm that stayed with him like a warm echo. He looked ahead, where his chart pointed to the next destination, the Whispering Rings, a series of narrow bands surrounding a small, quiet planet known as Veilon. The rings were rumored to emit soft vibrations, almost like voices, and no one had ever fully explained them. Curiosity sparked once again in Elian's heart. As the Celestia neared Veilon, the planet appeared gentle and still, clothed in soft lavender clouds. But it was the rings that truly caught his attention. Dozens of thin bands circled the planet, made not of ice or stone, but of fine dust and delicate particles that shimmered with static light. As he entered their path, the ship vibrated softly, nothing rough. Just a faint rhythm like breathing. Elian listened closely and began to hear the slightest hum, a chorus of whispers so soft, it almost sounded like wind passing through ancient leaves. "Log entry 10, he said slowly. "The rings of Veilon are more than dust. They're like a song the planet has been singing for ages. It's quiet, but it's there. A lullaby for the stars." He allowed the ship to drift gently through the rings for hours, feeling the vibrations beneath him and watching as the dust danced in smooth arcs outside. He wondered what caused the sounds. Gravity? Energy? Or something no one had thought of yet? But maybe, he thought, not every mystery needs to be solved. Some are meant to be felt. As he left the rings behind, they continued their gentle hum like a farewell, sung in silence. Elian charted a course away from Veilon's peaceful rings, the whisper of their song still echoing in his ears. The stars ahead seemed to twinkle with quiet approval, as if guiding him onward. His next destination was an uncharted zone on the edge of a starless gulf known simply as the Dusk Verge. Maps showed almost nothing there, no stars, no planets, no light. But hidden at the edge was a single blinking beacon, long forgotten and barely functioning. As the Celestia entered the Dusk Verge, the stars vanished behind him, swallowed by the thick blackness. It was the darkest place he had ever known. Even the ship's lights seemed to reach only a short distance before being consumed by the emptiness. He relied on instruments and inner calm to guide him. Finally, the faint beacon appeared, flickering weakly like a heartbeat barely hanging on. It was attached to a small floating station, old, dented, and silent. Elian docked carefully and entered the station wearing his suit. Inside, the air was thin but breathable, and the lights flickered low. Dust floated in stillness, undisturbed for what seemed like centuries. He walked the narrow halls slowly, passing old equipment, closed doors, and a control panel that still blinked with faint readings. In the command room, he found a faded journal, still intact, left by a traveler long before him. The words were simple. "I stayed here to listen to the dark. It's not empty. It speaks in stillness." Elian placed the journal back with respect and stood in silence for several minutes, honoring the memory of a soul who had found peace in the shadows. "Log entry 11, he whispered. "Even in the darkest corners of the universe, there is presence. There is meaning." Then, he returned to his ship, heart quiet and steady. As Elian left the Dusk Verge behind, he glanced once more at the flickering beacon. It faded slowly into the distance, like a candle being carried off by time. He sat in silence for a while, feeling the weight of the quiet still clinging gently to his thoughts. He knew the next journey would be different, more vibrant, more alive. His chart pointed toward a system known as the Blooming Spiral, a cluster of garden planets arranged in a gentle spiral orbit around a golden star. It was said that the planets were filled with endless plant life, some so old and tall they touched the clouds. The journey there took several days, and during that time, Elian studied old logs from other explorers and wrote reflections from his own travels. When the spiral finally came into view, he sat up, wide-eyed. Dozens of green and gold worlds spun slowly like petals of a flower in space. They glowed with natural life, their atmospheres rich and full. He chose to visit one of the inner planets first, which he soon named Verdalis. As the Celestia descended through its skies, the windows filled with views of massive forests, rivers that glowed with golden minerals, and trees so wide he could land his ship on their branches. He stepped out onto a clearing, and the scent of blooming leaves filled the air, sweet, ancient, and pure. Giant butterflies drifted past him, their wings shimmering with light. Log entry 12, he spoke softly. Verdalis is more than green. It is alive in a way that feels welcoming, like the planet itself knows you're here and is glad. He wandered beneath tall arches of bark and vine, feeling wonder return to him again, fresh and bright like morning sunlight after a long night. Elian spent an entire day walking through the living halls of Verdalis. The trees arched high above him, their trunks spiraling upward like towers carved from time itself. Vines hung like curtains, draped in glowing pods that pulsed faintly, as if breathing. He followed a winding path formed by soft moss, each step sinking slightly and springing back, as if the ground welcomed his presence. Birds with crystal-colored feathers fluttered through the branches, and gentle roars echoed in the distant synod, threatening, but ancient, like the voice of the forest itself rumbling in sleep. In the heart of the jungle, he discovered a great tree unlike any other. It stood taller than the rest, with leaves the size of sails and bark that shimmered with green and gold veins. At its base was a quiet pool of perfectly still water. Elian knelt beside it, seeing his reflection, and for a moment, it looked as though the tree itself was looking back at him through the pool's surface. He spoke not to record, but just to speak. You've been here a long time, haven't you? Watching, waiting, growing. The forest was quiet in response, but in that silence, he felt an answer. Peace, respect, understanding. He stayed for hours, sketching the leaves, sampling harmless seeds, listening to the wind's voice in the canopy. Then, when the sky began to turn a deep glowing Tila signal that night was coming, he made his way back to the ship. Log entry 13, he said. Verdalis is the universe's memory of life. It grows without demand. It welcomes without fear. It teaches not with words, but with presence. As the Celestia rose gently into the night sky, he looked down at the forest below. It waved to him, not with hands, but with breath, shadow, and time. Leaving Verdalis behind felt like leaving an old friend. Elion sat quietly as the planet grew smaller, its glowing rivers and towering trees shrinking into a single green gem among the stars. He took a deep breath and refocused his attention on the next planet in the blooming Spirala desert world named Solmera, known for its golden sands and rare flowering dunes. Though it lacked forests and lakes, Solmera was said to bloom for a single day every orbit, transforming its dry, still lands into a field of color. Elion timed his arrival carefully, and as the Celestia descended, the first signs of the bloom had just begun. The air shimmered with warmth, and the wind carried soft whispers of pollen. Rolling dunes spread out in every direction, and from them sprouted countless tiny stems, pushing upward, slowly opening. Within hours, the desert had transformed. Flowers of every shape and shade covered the sand, brilliant blues, fiery oranges, delicate pinks. Each petal seemed to glow under the twin suns above, and the dry wind hummed through the canyons like a desert flute. Elian walked carefully among the blooms, each step taken with awe and silence. The flowers were short-lived, delicate things that shivered at the slightest movement. He knew by tomorrow they would vanish, drawn back into the sand until the next cycle. Log entry 14. He recorded, his voice full of wonder. Solmera teaches that beauty can come from waiting. These flowers live only for a moment. But what a moment it is! They do not fear their ending. They bloom anyway. He collected a few samples for study, gently and respectfully, before returning to the ship. As night fell, the flowers began to close, and the desert sang one last soft note of color before returning to gold. As the Celestia lifted gently from Solmera's golden surface, Elian watched the last of the blooms retreat beneath the sand, vanishing like dreams upon waking. The sky turned a soft violet as twin moons rose over the horizon, casting long shadows across the now quiet dunes. He felt a gentle ache in his chest, not sadness, but reverence. There was something powerful in witnessing a world that celebrated life so briefly and so brightly. His ship sailed onward, winding through the remaining planets of the blooming spiral. Most were too stormy or too cold to land on, but each held a unique beauty when seen from above, storms dancing like silver dragons across a cobalt sea, or frozen oceans glittering under distant suns. But one small moon caught his attention. It was unnamed and had no life, but it reflected its parent planet's light in perfect clarity, like a mirror. Elian approached slowly, landing on its glassy surface. He stepped outside and found that the ground beneath him was made of smooth, dark crystal. Above, the stars shimmered in perfect reflection. He saw himself, the ship, and the galaxy stretching both above and below, as if he stood between two skies. There was no wind, no sound, no motion, only stillness and stars. Log entry 15, he said softly. This moon is silence, made solid. It shows me the sky not once, but twice. As above, so below. In this reflection, I see myself more clearly, not just as a traveler, but as a part of this vast dance. He sat on the surface for a while, breathing slowly, letting the silence wrap around him like a blanket. The universe didn't always speak in color or sound. Sometimes, it whispered only through reflection, and that was enough. As Elian sat on the reflective surface of the moon, the stars above and below seemed to converge, as if inviting him to ponder the endless journey he had embarked on. The silence was both peaceful and profound, a space where the universe itself seemed to pause and breathe with him. After some time, he stood up and returned to the Celestia. The moment of stillness stayed with him as he charted a course toward his next destination, a planet known as Krindle, a world of constant storms and swirling clouds. Unlike Solmera or Verdalis, Krindle wasn't a place for peaceful reflection. It was a planet of motion, energy, and chaos. As the ship approached, he could see the swirling storm systems from miles away, giant electric clouds swirling in a violent dance, streaks of lightning flashing across the sky. The air around Krindle crackled with energy. The planet's surface was hidden beneath a thick atmosphere of swirling gases, but Elian was drawn to it all the same. He maneuvered the Celestia carefully through the storm clouds, watching as the winds tore at the atmosphere, sending sparks of energy crackling in all directions. Inside the ship, the sensors hummed with life as Elian navigated through the turbulent air, his hands steady on the controls. He broke through the clouds and found himself hovering above a massive electric ocean, an endless expanse of charged particles, constantly crackling and shifting. The ocean's surface was alive with arcs of lightning, forming patterns that were both beautiful and terrifying. Log entry 16. Elian recorded, his voice calm but filled with awe. Krindle reminds me that chaos is as much a part of life as peace. The energy here is raw, untamed, but it exists for a reason. There's power in unpredictability. He spent a few hours above the electric ocean, watching as the storm reached its peak, feeling the power of the planet pulse beneath him. It was a reminder that the universe wasn't always gentle. It could be fierce, intense, and wild. As the storm on Krindle began to settle, the winds slowed and the electric ocean calmed. Elian slowly pulled the Celestia back toward the stars. The planet, still buzzing with its fierce energy, faded behind him. There was a certain respect he had gained for it. The raw, untamed beauty of its storms, the relentless power that kept it alive. The Celestia moved away from the tumultuous world and set course for the next stop in his journey, the Nebula of Echoes, a vast and mysterious region filled with interstellar clouds of gas and dust. It was said that in the depths of the nebula, the winds carried echoes, whispers of long-lost messages and forgotten conversations carried through the ages. As he entered the nebula, Elian felt an immediate shift. The stars dimmed, and the deep hues of the nebula enveloped him like a cosmic fog. The space ahead was dense, filled with swirling clouds of violet, blue, and pink gases, tinged with the faint light of distant stars struggling to shine through the dust. The echoes were soft at first, barely perceptible, like whispers in the wind. Then they grew stronger, more distinct. Words, phrases, fragments of thoughts, and memories seemed to float through the ship, as if the very nebula carried the voices of those who had traveled through it before. He couldn't make out all of them, but the feeling was unmistakable, a sense that he was not alone, that the voices of the past were reaching out across the vastness of space. Log entry 17. Elian said, his voice low and thoughtful. The Nebula of Echoes carries the memories of the universe. It's like listening to the whispers of time itself. Every step I take feels like walking through a dream made of stardust and memories. He allowed the Celestia to drift slowly through the nebula, listening to the voices, feeling the weight of the past surround him. It was a reminder that the universe, though vast and empty in places, was always full of stories. Elian drifted deeper into the Nebula of Echoes, the voices around him growing more distinct, as if they were calling from the very fabric of the cosmos. He couldn't tell if the whispers were coming from the nebula itself, or if they were simply reflections of his own thoughts, caught in the nebula's swirling mists. Some of the whispers seemed familiar, like words he had heard in his dreams. Others were strange, like voices from a world he would never visit. They came and went, their soft tones fading into the vastness of space. The longer Elian stayed within the nebula, the more he felt as though time itself was bending. The stars outside were mere pinpricks in the dark, their light diffused by the clouded dust, leaving only a faint glow. It was as if he had entered a place between moments, a realm where past, present, and future mingled in a continuous dance. He marveled at the thought, his heart filled with the vastness of it all. Log entry 18, Elian said softly, his voice full of reverence. The Nebula of Echoes is more than a place in space. It is a threshold between times, a place where the universe speaks in voices that are both familiar and distant. I feel as though I'm walking through the memory of the stars themselves. He closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the soft hum of the nebula around him. The whispers continued, now merging into a gentle lullaby, like a cosmic song that had been sung for eons. As the Celestia glided through the nebula, Elian understood something profound. Even in the silence of space, the universe was alive with story-histories of people, places, and events long past. And though he might never fully understand them, he would carry their echoes with him, always. As Elian emerged from the Nebula of Echoes, the whispers slowly faded into the distance, like the final notes of a song drifting away on the wind. The stars above him grew clearer again, their light steady and bright, but the sense of timelessness lingered, like a soft veil across his mind. He felt that the universe had shared something with him, something unspoken yet deeply felt a connection to all that had come before. The next leg of his journey took him to a world known only as the Silent Ocean. It was a planet surrounded by deep, endless waters that seemed to reflect the very soul of the universe. There were no waves, no storms, only stillness. Elian had heard stories of it, but no one had ever landed there. Some believed the ocean held a secret so profound that no one could understand it, while others thought it was a place where the universe itself came to rest. As the Celestia descended toward the surface, Elian felt the stillness in his bones. The ocean stretched endlessly below him, a vast expanse of smooth water that shimmered under the light of the nearby star. There were no visible shores, no land, just an endless sea that stretched to the horizon, where it met the sky in perfect harmony. The ship gently touched down on the surface of the water, its hull making no sound, as though the ocean absorbed the impact completely. Elian stepped outside and stood on the silent surface, feeling the coolness of the water beneath his boots. He marveled at the utter calm. There was no sound, no movement, only the sensation of being utterly alone with the vastness of the universe. Log entry 19, he spoke in a quiet, reverent voice. The Silent Ocean is not a place for exploration. It is a place for contemplation. The stillness here is not empty. It is full. It fills me with the understanding that sometimes, to truly know the universe, one must simply stop and listen. He closed his eyes, letting the silence wash over him, feeling the weight of the universe in the quiet. Elian remained on the Silent Ocean for several days, lost in the stillness that surrounded him. Time seemed to slow, and with it, the boundaries of his mind seemed to expand. He found himself reflecting on everything he had seen so far: the hollow sphere, the whispering rings, the storms of Krindel, the blooms of Solmera, and the voices of the Nebula of Echoes. Each place had offered its own lesson, its own piece of the universe. And now, standing on the Silent Ocean, he understood that each of those lessons was part of a larger truth. The universe was infinite, but it was also interconnected. Every planet, every star, every whisper in the wind was part of a grand, delicate web that stretched across time and space. It was a realization that filled him with both awe and humility. As he stood by the edge of the ocean, Elian thought about the explorers who had come before him, the ones who had ventured into the unknown, seeking answers to questions that may never have clear answers. He thought of their stories, their struggles, and their triumphs. In a way, he had become a part of that legacy. Log entry 20. Elian spoke softly, his voice carrying the weight of his thoughts. I have learned that the universe does not offer simple answers. It offers experiences. It teaches through the things we see, the things we feel, and the things we cannot explain. The Silent Ocean is a place where the answers are not found, but where the questions are allowed to rest. As he returned to the Celestia and lifted off the surface of the ocean, Elian knew that he would carry this lesson with him forever. The universe, vast and unknowable, was a place of endless discovery, and it was in the silence that he found his truest connection to it. As Elian left the Silent Ocean behind, he charted a course toward his final destination, a place he had heard only whispered tales about: the heart of the universe. This was a legendary region, said to lie at the very center of the cosmos, where time and space intertwined, creating a singularity of unimaginable power. Few had ventured there, and even fewer had returned. The coordinates were only speculative, based on the ancient maps of travelers who had been drawn to the center but had never returned with any definitive records. As the Celestia sailed toward the unknown, Elian could feel the weight of what lay ahead. He had journeyed through distant worlds, through storms and quiet places, through reflections and echoes. But this was different. The heart of the universe was not just a physical place, it was the origin of all things, the beginning and end of everything. He arrived at the edge of the region, where the fabric of space seemed to ripple, like the surface of a pond disturbed by an unseen force. The stars around him shifted in strange patterns, bending and folding into one another as though they were alive. At the center of this cosmic dance, Elian saw a swirling vortex of light, energy, and color, unlike anything he had ever imagined. It was a vast and radiant spiral, pulsing with energy so powerful that it felt as though it could pull the entire universe into its core. As he approached the vortex, the Celestia was caught in its gravitational pull. The ship's instruments flickered and buzzed, and Elian braced himself as the ship's speed increased, drawn inexorably toward the heart of this cosmic maelstrom. Log entry 21, Elian said with quiet resolve. I have reached the heart of the universe. This is not just a place. It is the pulse of existence, the source of everything. I do not know what I will find here, but I know it is where all journeys end. His voice was steady, though a sense of awe and reverence filled his heart. This was the final frontier, the place where all paths converged. As Elian approached the swirling vortex at the center of the universe, the force around him seemed to grow stronger. The stars outside the Celestia twisted into impossible shapes, their light becoming distorted as if reality itself were bending under the weight of the heart. His ship was pulled closer, the instruments blinking and flickering as they struggled to keep up with the cosmic forces at play. Despite the turbulence, Elian's mind remained focused. He had come this far, and he knew there was no turning back now. The Celestia was pulled into the core of the vortex, and for a moment, everything seemed to collapse into a single point of light. There was no up or down, no left or right, only pure energy, flowing and shifting in every direction. Then, in an instant, the vortex spat them out into a new space, one that defied all logic. The Celestia was floating in the heart of a glowing nebula, surrounded by a sea of brilliant colors, swirling lights, and strange geometric shapes. The laws of physics seemed to lose their meaning here. Time stretched and folded like a fabric, and Elian couldn't tell how long he had been floating in this place. Log entry 22, he said softly, though his voice was filled with wonder. The heart of the universe is not just a place, it is a gateway, a place where the very fabric of existence is woven together. I am not sure what lies here, but I know that I have crossed into a space beyond understanding. His hands hovered over the controls of the Celestia, unsure of how to navigate this strange new realm. Yet, despite the unfamiliarity, Elian felt a profound sense of peace. It was as though he had arrived at the origin of everything, the place where all things began, and where they would eventually return. As Elian floated in the surreal, glowing nebula at the center of the universe, he felt a sense of awe that was deeper than anything he had ever experienced. The space around him seemed to shimmer and pulse with a life of its own, like the universe itself was breathing. The stars, now mere echoes of light, swirled together in endless patterns, creating a mosaic of celestial art that stretched across the void. In the distance, Elian saw shapes forming, though he couldn't be sure whether they were objects, memories, or something else entirely. His senses became attuned to the flow of energy around him, as though the very air in the Celestia had become part of this cosmic dance. Log entry 23, Elian said, his voice trembling slightly with the weight of his thoughts. The heart of the universe is not just a place. It is a concept, a nexus where the infinite and the finite merge. I feel as though I am in the presence of something far beyond my understanding, something that predates even the first stars. He drifted closer to one of the glowing shapes, unsure of what it was. As he moved through the strange space, he began to perceive a shift in his perception. The stars, the nebula, the swirling lights, it all seemed to come alive, revealing the threads of existence woven into the fabric of space. It was as though he could see the past and future at the same time, like a vast tapestry of time stretching in all directions. He could feel the weight of every decision, every event, and every life that had ever existed or ever would. It was overwhelming, but also beautiful, like watching the universe unfold in all its complexity. In that moment, Elian understood that the heart of the universe was not a destination, it was a point of understanding. a place where all the mysteries of existence converged. And though he could never truly comprehend it all, he could feel the truth of it deep within him. As Elian continued to drift through the heart of the universe, the vastness around him seemed to recede, leaving only the pulse of existence. Time no longer had any meaning here. There was no distinction between past, present, or future. Everything existed simultaneously, flowing like a river through the fabric of the cosmos. He could feel the ancient energy of the universe, a force that had been there since the beginning of all things and would remain until the end. It was as if the heart was alive, its rhythm matching the beat of his own heart. Log entry 24, Elian said softly, his voice barely audible in the stillness. This place is not just a nexus of space and time. It is the soul of the universe. The energy here is ancient, but it is also eternal. Everything I've seen, everything I've learned, it all converges here. And yet, in this moment, I realize how little I truly understand. The universe is vast beyond comprehension, and I am but a small part of it. He closed his eyes for a moment, allowing the sensation of the heart's energy to wash over him. It was calming, yet humbling. The power here was overwhelming, and yet it was also peaceful. It was a reminder that, despite the immensity of the cosmos, everything had a place. He was not insignificant, but neither was he the center of it all. He was simply a traveler, passing through this magnificent tapestry of existence. As he opened his eyes again, the swirling lights and energy around him began to shift, slowly at first, and then with increasing intensity. The patterns of the stars began to fold in on themselves, forming new shapes, new configurations that Elian could not comprehend. The very fabric of space seemed to warp, as if the heart of the universe was revealing itself in a new way, one that transcended his perception. As the cosmic energy around Elian intensified, the space in the heart of the universe seemed to stretch and contract, as though it were alive and breathing. The stars, the nebula, the very essence of the universe all seemed to pulse with a rhythm that was both foreign and familiar. He could feel his own heartbeat in sync with it, as if he were now part of the greater whole, an integral thread in the infinite web of existence. The Celestia floated in the center of this cosmic symphony, and Elian could not help but feel a sense of awe at the beauty of it all. He had come seeking answers, but now he realized that the answers were not what he had expected. They were not found in tangible truths or scientific discoveries. Instead, the answer lay in the realization that the universe, in all its complexity, was something that could never fully be understood, only experienced. Log entry 25, Elian said, his voice calm but filled with emotion. I have come to understand that the universe is not a puzzle to be solved. It is a story that unfolds in ways we cannot predict or control. We are all part of that story, and our journey is not to find the end, but to live the experience. The swirling patterns around him began to slow, the energy coalescing into something more defined, more focused. A new shape formed in the center of the heart, a brilliant light, so intense that it almost blinded him. Yet it felt welcoming, as if it were offering him a glimpse of something greater. Elian felt an overwhelming pull toward it. Not a physical force, but a spiritual one. It was as though the light was inviting him to take the final step, to fully embrace the universe's mystery and its beauty. His heart raced, but this time, it was not out of fear. It was out of anticipation. He understood now that his journey was not just about discovery, was about transformation. And as he moved closer to the light, he felt himself becoming part of that transformation, part of the great flow of the universe. As Elian approached the brilliant light at the center of the heart of the universe, everything else seemed to fade away. The swirling nebula, the distant stars, the celestial of it blurred into nothingness. There was only the light, pulsing with a rhythm that resonated deep within his soul. He felt the universe itself reaching out to him, calling him to join in its endless cycle of creation and destruction, of life and death, of light and darkness. Log entry 26, Elian said, his voice soft, almost reverent. This light, it is not just a force of energy. It is the heart of everything. It is the source from which all things emerge, and to which all things will eventually return. It is the beginning and the end. And in this moment, I feel as though I am both part of it and separate from it. A single note in a song that has been sung since the dawn of time. He reached out his hand toward the light, and as his fingers drew nearer, he felt the energy of the universe flowing through him. It was as if every moment, every experience, every life that had ever existed was flowing into him, and he into it. He felt an overwhelming sense of unity, as though he were one with everything in existence, the stars, the planets, the galaxies, and all the beings who had ever lived. In that instant, Elion understood that the universe was not something separate from him. It was a part of him, just as he was a part of it. The light enveloped him, not with blinding intensity, but with a warmth that filled every corner of his being. It was as if the universe itself had embraced him, welcomed him into its eternal embrace. And for the first time in his journey, Elion felt no fear, no doubt, only peace. He closed his eyes, surrendering to the flow of energy, knowing that this was not an end, but a new beginning. As Elion surrendered to the light, he felt the boundaries of his body and mind dissolve. He was no longer just a boy in a spaceship, was a part of the cosmos itself. The energy that had once been distant, foreign, now felt like home, as though it had always been within him, waiting for this moment of realization. He no longer thought of himself as a traveler, as an explorer seeking answers. Instead, he understood that he was a reflection of the universe, and the universe was a reflection of him. Log entry 27. Elion said, his voice almost a whisper. I have transcended the limits of my understanding. The heart of the universe has shown me the truth. We are all one. We are all part of the same story. And though we may walk different paths, we are all connected in ways that are beyond words. The light around him shifted again, its pulse now slower, deeper, as if responding to his newfound awareness. He could feel the universe's breath steady and eternal. He felt no desire to leave, no urge to return to the Celestia, no longing for the familiar sights of distant planets. Everything he had seen, everything he had experienced, had led him to this moment of understanding. There was no need for further exploration, for he had discovered the greatest truth of all. The journey was not about finding new worlds or new answers, but about understanding the deeper connections that bind all things together. In that moment, Elion knew that his journey had never truly been about the places he had visited, but about the growth he had experienced within himself. As the light faded, the vastness of the heart of the universe remained with him, not as a distant place, but as an eternal presence that would continue to guide him. Even as he returned to the world from which he had come, he felt a profound peace, knowing that he had touched the essence of existence itself. As the light of the heart of the universe dimmed, Elion slowly felt himself returning to his physical form. The vast energy that had surrounded him seemed to recede, but its warmth and tranquility lingered within him, woven into the very fabric of his being. His mind was clearer than it had ever been, and his heart was full with a sense of knowing that transcended all logic. It was not an intellectual understanding, but a profound feeling that connected him to the stars, to the planets, to everything that had ever existed and ever would. Log entry 28, Elion said, his voice steady and calm. I am not the same as I was when I first set out. I have seen the infinite, and I have understood it in ways that words cannot describe. The universe is not a place, it is a living, breathing entity, a vast and interconnected web of life and energy. He took a deep breath, feeling the hum of the Celestia beneath him. The familiar sounds of the ship, the soft beeping of the instruments, the hum of the engine set was all still there, but it felt different now, more like a part of him than a machine. He looked out the viewports, seeing the stars again, but this time, they were not distant or cold. They were familiar, like old friends, their light a reminder of the journey he had taken. As the Celestia began its slow journey back toward the outer reaches of the universe, Elion knew that his adventure was far from over. Though he had found the heart of the universe, the true journey was not about reaching a destination, it was about how he carried the lessons he had learned within him. He understood now that the universe would continue to unfold before him, and every new experience would be another thread in the grand tapestry of existence. He did not need to understand it all, nor did he need to control it. All that was required was that he lived in harmony with it. As the Celestia glided through the cosmos, Elion sat back in the captain's chair, allowing himself a moment of reflection. The stars around him twinkled like distant beacons, each one representing a unique story in the vastness of the universe. He had touched the heart of the universe, felt its pulse, and understood its message. Yet, even now, as he journeyed back through the infinite expanse, he realized that there was no end to the discovery. Each star, each planet, each cosmic phenomenon was another chapter waiting to be explored. Log entry 29, Elion said, his voice steady, but filled with a quiet reverence. I have learned that the universe is not a riddle to be solved. It is a story that is constantly unfolding, and each of us plays a part in it, however small or large. We are not simply travelers, we are participants in a grand narrative that stretches beyond time, beyond space, beyond our understanding. He smiled softly to himself, feeling a sense of peace settle within him. The desire to understand, to chart every corner of the cosmos, had faded. Instead, what remained was an appreciation for the beauty and mystery of it all. He no longer felt the pressure to find all the answers, because he had come to understand that the answers were not the point. The point was to embrace the journey itself, to live fully in the experience of existence, with all its wonder and uncertainty. As the Celestia sailed through the stars, Elian felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. He had seen the universe in ways few could even imagine, and yet he understood that there was still so much more to discover. He would never know it all, and that was okay. The journey was the discovery, and the discovery was a never-ending cycle that would continue for as long as he had the courage to move forward. As the Celestia continued its voyage through the stars, Elian looked out at the vast emptiness of space, but it no longer felt empty to him. The stars, the planets, and the distant galaxies were all connected, like threads in an infinite tapestry. He had seen the heart of the universe, and with it, the truth that everything was interconnected. Every being, every moment, every speck of dust floating in the void was part of something greater. Log entry 30. Elian spoke, his voice calm, almost as if it were a final entry in a journey of discovery. The universe is not an entity to conquer or understand completely. It is a living story, with each of us writing our own chapter as we go. The questions I had when I first set out are no longer the same. I sought answers, but I found something even more valuable, a deeper connection to everything around me. He took a deep breath and leaned back in the chair, letting the hum of the Celestia fill the silence. There was a sense of finality in his words, but not in a way that felt like an ending. It was the finality of completion, the realization that the journey was not about arriving somewhere, but about the experience along the way. The universe, in all its infinite expanse, was not something to be feared or conquered. It was something to be lived in, embraced, and felt. And Elian had done just that. He had embraced the vastness, the mystery, the beauty, and the chaos. He had let it shape him, and in doing so, he had found peace. As the stars stretched out before him, endless and unchanging, Elian knew that there would be more journeys, more discoveries, more questions to ask. But for now, he was content. He had seen the universe in all its glory, and had learned the most important lesson of all, that in the end, it is not the answers we seek, but the moments we live, the connections we make, and the peace we find along the way.